A barrister who killed an 84-year-old man in a head-on crash on a blind North Yorkshire summit, who initially denied responsibility and served 23 months in prison, has now been cleared to return to practicing law. The man who died, Michael Lupton, doesn't get to resume anything. His life ended that day in Ampleforth, but once his sentence ends in September, Hamish Hickey will be allowed to return to the bar. And it raises a difficult question. If prison is meant to punish and rehabilitate, Adam, you're a big fan of that, then once someone has served their time, should their professional life simply carry on? Or when you're part of the justice system itself, should the bar, no pun intended, maybe pun intended, be higher? This is True Crime Catch-Up with myself, Stuart Blues, and my partner, Adam Lloyd. Sounds weird calling you my partner. Hello, Adam.
And also your friend.
Well, kind of. If you're enjoying the show, please follow, subscribe, leave a comment, and also a rating. It helps more than you think. Right then, Adam, let's get into this story. Now, I think that, seeing as though it's from my neck of the woods in Yorkshire, I actually saw this on our regional news show called Calendar on ITV. I don't know what the regional show is up where you are, but ITV has different regional shows for the news, in case you didn't know. It's very droll.
I don't really watch terrestrial TV anymore. I've moved on to
Oh, you don't watch anything apart from your own reflection, do you? Because it's from Yorkshire, it makes sense for me to open this episode by just laying out the facts. So in July 2022, on Thorpe Lane near Ampleforth in North Yorkshire, Barrister Hamish Hickey was driving over a blind summit with his two children in the car. These blind summits, they're all the rage up there. There's typically not many streetlights on these roads, Adam, so you could see a sign with a triangle. It says blind summit, but you can't see the sign. So how are you going to see the summit? It's worth noting that Hamish, or Hickey, let's call him, had previous penalty points on his licence for speeding. There's a bit of context for you. As he drove through the narrow and dimly lit roads at speed, he collided head-on with 84-year-old Michael Lupton, who was driving his own car. Initially, Hickey told the police the crash wasn't his fault. He claimed instead that Michael had been driving in the middle of the road, so he's blaming the victim. But forensic collision evidence proved otherwise, and Hickey later admitted causing death by dangerous driving. So basically he lied in the first instance before going back on it, but only because he got caught out. In November 2024, he was sentenced to 23 months in prison, banned from driving for 35 months. But get this. He was moved to an open prison just 1 month into his sentence, and he was later released in August 2025 after being told he could serve the rest of his sentence on licence. So he spends a total of 9 months in prison. 8 of those were in an open one. And the reason he's been in the news this week just gone is because the Bar Standards Board, the BSB, has ruled that Hickey can return to practice at the end of his sentence on September 30th, 2026, stating this was not a crime of dishonesty, even though he lied, or moral wickedness. Rather, it was criminally dangerous driving. He did appeal that decision, Hickey, but a panel deemed it appropriate to wait until his licence date had finished. So, Adam, I think this is where it gets a bit uncomfortable, because we're talking about someone who represents the law, ultimately, someone who stands in court arguing justice for other people, but it's someone who's caused a death, not an accident, not an injury, a death through dangerous driving. I mentioned at the start, you're big into rehabilitation for prisoners, so I just want to ask you whether you think once the sentence is served, should that be the end of it for him professionally, or is Hickey's role in the justice system a reason for that not to have it changed? So because of his job, should he be an exception?
Well, let's come back to that. Let's talk one more thing first. I disagree with everybody I know on this. Everybody else I know says that people should go to prison for dangerous driving. I don't see it. The fact that there's a death, what difference does that make? I know it makes a difference, of course, for the family involved, and people say to me, if it was your loved ones, you'd feel very differently. But I'm still not quite sure what the point is of putting him in prison for a dangerous
He was barely in
driving
prison,
conviction.
though, let's face it. He was barely in prison.
But he was still
So
sent to prison. Was that the best? Was that the best sentence for someone like him? Surely he's better off going into schools, into colleges, 6 days a week for 5 years, isn't he?
and doing what though?
Talking about the dangers of dangerous driving.
But for me, he doesn't seem to know what the dangers are. This is someone who had points on his license for speeding previously. He's going quick over a blind bend, and it's resulted in someone's death. Who is he to tell people how to drive safe?
Have you got points on your license, Stuart?
No,
You haven't.
no, touch wood, no.
When I used to drive a lot, I actually got up to 9 points on my license. I got 6 in one day. But I would argue they weren't. I wasn't doing like 130 on the M6, with one hand on my phone. I think I got done for being 32 in the 30-mile-an-hour zone at about 1:30 in the morning, and there was one for going through roadworks. So these points on the license, I don't know. I think it can vary. But in terms of him being who's he to talk, I think if he's been through it and he's seen the repercussions of what he did, I think he's the perfect person to go and speak in schools and colleges. Surely that's much more use than sticking him into a prison for X number of years.
I mean, I take your point.
Nobody
If it's
agrees with me.
Well, this is something I know you're keen on this, which is why I mentioned it twice so far.
Hmm.
I do think it changes things though when a life is lost as a result of your dangerous driving. I think there's a big difference between doing a 32 and a 30 and driving into someone who is driving normally on the right side of the road, by the way. So Michael wasn't doing anything wrong, despite Hickey claiming that he was. Completely innocent person has lost their life because of this guy's reckless driving. I don't think sending him to schools, maybe do that after the prison sentence, but I think there needs to be some kind of recourse for that action, and it has to be a punishment. I don't think just tossing it off at a school 5 days a week would be really something that would bother him as a punishment.
But my view always is, as you know, that rather than do 2 years in prison, I'd rather he did 7 years active service in the community, 6 days a week, full days as well. So he's really giving something back to the community. Because I don't know, just to make back to the basics, is that prison is for people who are a danger to you, me, and our families.
But he is. He is a danger. He's killed someone with his dangerous driving. That's the point. He is a danger to you and your family and me and people out there. I
So
would
what if
argue
he-
that point. But why not, instead of doing 7 years of the community service, why not do the 2 years he got, 23 months, and then 5 years after the fact?
What if he'd ricochet off the car of the person who he killed and no one had been injured? Should he still go to prison?
Well, you can get bogged down in whataboutery, can't we? We can,
Mm.
what if, there's a idiom in there about your aunt and your uncle, which we won't say on here. But it's irrelevant because he didn't ricochet and no one got hurt. He killed someone. That's the fact. We have to deal with it as is.
Let me ask you one other question then. So this was on my Facebook group a couple of weeks ago. Why do we give stronger sentences for murder than attempted murder? Shouldn't it be exactly the same?
I would agree. Yeah. I saw a case recently where there was a guy, where was it? This young lad I don't know if it was Scotland or London, but there's footage of him and he gets off a train and it was a racially motivated attack against a Muslim man. And he got an axe out and he whacked him in the back of the head and the neck.
Christ.
Attempted murder. 4 years he got. 4 years.
See, someone like him, I think I'll send him for 20 years, wouldn't you? For that sort of attack? Because he's a pure danger to everyone.
Exactly. No, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, we could get again bogged down with the difference between certain sentences for some people. There's people who will sexually assault children and might get 12 months in prison, and then there's a tax fraud who might get 15 years. It's inconsistent with the sentencing. We're probably not knowledgeable enough to comment further on that. However, based on what's reported in the news, there are some head scratchers out there when it comes to sentencing, right? For different stuff that you think, really? Is that all they've got? Or wow, they've got that much?
Oh, absolutely. But look, let's go back to the question you actually asked me. You asked me about, because of what he does it make a difference? And
Hmm.
my view is it becomes really tricky, doesn't it? Because on paper, the justice system says punishment, he's done his punishment, then rehabilitation. He pleaded guilty, he served his sentence, he's banned from driving. And the tribunal even said that public confidence required that he did not return until the full sentence, including license, was completed. And if we believe in rehabilitation, then what are we saying? If someone can never return to their profession after serving time, are we saying prison is just permanent branding? So what if he's a builder? We're not stopping him go back there potentially. But then again, I suppose he's just not in a random profession. He is a barrister. He represents people in court. He's part of the machinery of justice. And the stats here, Stuart, are really, really interesting. You shared these with me. ITV reported last week that there are at least 115 barristers currently practicing in England and Wales who have criminal convictions resulting in 6 months or more in prison. So this isn't just a one-off, is it? And for wider context, that's about 0.7% of the total practicing barrister population. So the number, I guess, is very low. Then I suppose really, Stuart, my question back to you is, does the type of crime that's been committed matter more than the fact of conviction? Because the BSB disbars people for dishonesty, but not necessarily for causing death through dangerous driving. So, I don't know, where do you think this line should sit?
Well, it's an ever-shifting mythical line, this, isn't it? It's, where do you draw the line in the sand? I mean, let's look at some other examples and compare them for a little bit of wider context. So,
Yeah.
the BSB has disbarred, so not allowed them to come back to work, it's a fancy word for that, disbarred barristers previously for copying essays at university.
Really?
Seems a strange thing, right? Others have been struck off for manipulating invoices. Again, you can understand that, but it's not killing someone. Because ultimately, dishonesty undermines the integrity of the profession. That's what it should be about, integrity. We all know that barristers can bend the truth and they can lie or omit information, let's say. We know that.
But hold on, Stuart, is that the same for any profession?
Well, I guess. I'm sure there's people who've rung in sick at work when they've not been fully sick. They just want the time off.
Surely not, Stuart. Surely not.
I mean, I'm
None of our
sure they
listeners.
have. But again, there's levels to this, right?
Yeah.
There's levels to... Because if you're dishonest, how can the court, the justice system, how can the court trust you, let alone your clients or the people on the opposite side of you? But with this incident, we've got a dangerous driving incident that's resulted in a death. That's not a minor thing by any stretch. And again, I would argue that this person is a danger to society. So therefore, I think prison is justified. As for Michael Lupton, he was 84. Now, you could come in with the argument that he was 84. He was an older guy. I'm not even going to entertain that because the age for me is irrelevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
He had neighbours of 20 plus years who described him as a close friend. I was watching the actual news thing, as I said last week, and this is why I raised this to you to talk about. Speaking about how lovely a guy he was. I don't know if he had kids of his own, but he would sort of look at the adult neighbours as his sort of, faux children, if you like. He'd do anything for you. And his life needlessly ended on that road that night. But what adds to discomfort for me is that Hickey initially denied responsibility. He blamed the victim. Now, whether he knew he died at that point, I don't know. But he blamed the victim, which for me, I find completely disgusting, personally. He did later admit guilt, and remorse has been noted. We have to make people aware of that. But does changing your statement only after forensic evidence has proved that you're a liar, does that count as always admitting guilt? Does that mean that you're honest? Or is it just, yep, you've caught me out, I was bullshitting you? Do you know what I mean? And here's something else. Would this feel different? We've touched upon this. If he wasn't a barrister, you mentioned if they were a builder, for example. What if he was a delivery driver or a plumber?
Yep.
Would we be even having this conversation? Who knows? If an employee of yours, Adam, in your firm of millions that you employ, if an employee of yours went to prison for something that Hickey had done, would you welcome them back to your firm with open arms? Now, before you answer that, I work in my real job for a financial institution.
Yeah.
Part of working for them is to do, well, through the investigations, you do what's called an adverse media check.
Yeah.
So we will actively see if anyone has, whether it's a conviction for something to do with finance. It used to be that if it was to do with finance, we would get rid of them on that basis. It's since
Mm.
widened to any adverse media because
Oh,
reputational damage by association can occur. And this could be stuff from years and years and years ago.
go on, like at university even or something. They're out drunk at
If
university.
could be, you wouldn't necessarily guarantee to have the connection exited, for example.
Wow.
But the question would be discussed because, again, it's association with a crime, right? So let's bring it back to that question. If you had a firm, let's say you run Adams Plumbing, yeah,
Yep.
AL Plumbing, and you've got someone who gets 2 years in prison. Yeah, they're a damn good plumber, right? One of the I don't know if Hickey is. I'm assuming he's good enough because he's qualified, and it's quite hard to get qualified as far as I can see looking at the BSB's website. So let's say you got a damn good plumber. He is a dangerous driver though, and he kills someone, and then he gets 2 years prison, open cell, on license, whatever. He comes to you and goes, Adam, September 30th this year, my license is over. Assuming I behave, I'd like to come back to work for you. Would you welcome him back and say, yeah, I need you, yeah? Or would you think, actually, mate, you are not the kind of person I want representing my firm? What would you say?
I tend to say yes. I tend to say yes, but that's because of my
What,
belief
you'd welcome him
about,
back, you mean?
yeah, because it's
Would
my
you?
belief about dangerous driving and careless driving. I think
That's interesting.
you spoke about the sort of roads in Yorkshire, and you see it all around the country. Country roads. How many times have you driven on a country road? And I mean, there's country roads, really. You see the speed people go on these country roads. They're lethal, aren't they?
It's mad to me that they're all national speed limit, most of them,
Yeah.
which is 60 mile an hour for those not in the know on a single lane. 60 mile an hour. And
I
again,
know.
none of them, well, a lot of them aren't well lit. Some of them don't
No.
even have lights on them.
No.
It's mad that you can drive at that speed. But do you think there's an element here, whether we like it or not, of maybe you don't, but do you think there's any professional privilege here? The fact that he's a barrister, maybe they look after their own. I don't know. That's an assumption on my part. What do you think? Do you think any of that's at play?
I'd love to say no, but to me, my honest view, it's hard not to wonder. So he moved to an open prison after a month. He had home detention curfew. He's appealing aspects of the suspension. I'm not saying it's improper. He's doing what he can do, but optics matter, don't they? We talk about lockdown in politics as well, about lawmakers can't be lawbreakers. That's why people should be sacked, MPs, ministers, when they break the law. But when Michael Lupton's friend said that she feels bitter, if it happened to you or I, we'd fail a criminal records check and we'll be wiped out, really, wouldn't we? And that resonates with people, I'm sure, our listeners today, because most professions don't have a structured return pathway. But then again, it's so difficult. We've got to be careful because the BSB is independent. They regulate barristers in England and Wales. Their job is to maintain public confidence. They've said suspending him until sentence completion protects that confidence. And I get that. I really do. But the tension then sits here, doesn't it? Are they upholding standards by suspending him until completion? Or are they lowering standards by allowing him back at all? And maybe the bigger question here, Stuart, we see it in other countries, don't we? Should the victims' families or friends have more of a say in regulatory hearings like this?
I think that's a powerful point. Before I answer it, I'll go back to something you just mentioned about failing in a criminal records check. And that's an important note, because if we were applying for a job and someone, let's say you're working with kids, for example, I know this isn't that, but if they did a CRB check, right?
Yeah.
And if you had anything on there, odds are you wouldn't get the job.
You wouldn't.
Doesn't matter how good of a carer you are, whatever, driving conviction or not, let's say, as an example. So for the layman, the lay person, should say, the punishment is there from an employee perspective. How many ex-cons, if you like, struggle to get work, regular work, without being put on a pathway by, whether it's the parole officers board or whoever, people to do with the prison system, may be able to get them a job, but they wouldn't necessarily be able to get a job, in finance or be the leader of a company. Do you know what I
No, they
mean?
wouldn't.
So
They
that there
wouldn't.
is some kind of, for the regular person, there is some kind of lifelong branding, that's the term we used earlier, if you have been to prison, and there is a stigma against it. Everyone knows that. If you hear that someone's been to prison, if you met someone on a night out and they told you that, it might be an instinct to go, oh, okay. You might pull back a little bit. I think that's pretty natural, right?
Oh, absolutely. And just while you're saying that, on that point, a big shout out to some of those companies who do give prisoners a chance. What they call Timpsons. Is that the one that do the keys? You see them outside supermarkets.
Yeah,
They're
the keys and
renowned,
the
aren't they?
cobbling.
Yeah, and they're renowned for giving ex-prisoners a chance, and it can be so difficult. We've heard stories so many times on our podcast about how ex-prisoners struggle to get housing, struggle to get jobs. So these companies that do give them a chance, bravo to them, don't you think?
Bravo.
Bravo, am I in the Victorian times?
Bravo, absolutely.
Watching too much Downton Abbey.
So you do watch something. So let's bring it back to the question then. Should victims' families or friends have more of a say in regulatory hearings? So think about Michael's neighbour, Angie. There's no ambiguity as far as she's concerned. She sees a man whose life has ended and another whose career has simply been put on pause.
Yeah.
Michael doesn't get restoration, but Hickey does. And it's interesting. I mentioned to my friend yesterday, I went out walking with him, and we were talking about how in the area where I live, just a few months back, I think I told this to you, there was a murder. Someone stabbed someone and killed them. And it was on my regular dog walking route.
Yeah.
Now, a few months down the line, it's as if it never happened. So many people drive past that and will have no idea that someone's life got taken. So in this situation, Michael's life has ended. For Hickey, it's put on pause for a couple of years, inconvenient. But he can still go straight back to work. Maybe he's on the same salary. Who knows? Further down the line, maybe he'll get his increases with inflation. Who knows? But Michael doesn't get the restoration. So this opens up a wider issue about sentencing for causing death by dangerous driving. Let's not talk about dangerous driving as a whole. So 23 months he got, less than 2 years. Is that proportionate when someone's died? I say accident. I guess it was an accident, but lying about it makes it seem like you were doing something wrong. Or are we consistently seeing families feel that and friends, that these sentences are too short? It's not about revenge. That's not what I'm suggesting here. But it is about balance because, again, regular person on the street does this crime. Are they going to get 23 months, serve a month before going to open prison and then have only 9 months there and then serve the rest of it on license? I don't know. But these are the arguments that some people might think do happen to the regular person. Because if someone causes a death by dangerous driving, particularly if they lie about denying responsibility, shouldn't that automatically trigger professional consequences in certain fields? I'm talking law, medicine, teaching, where integrity should be at the top of the list for a characteristic, right?
Yeah, but if we do so, then we're saying that certain crimes mean permanent exclusion. We're effectively saying that, I suppose we're saying that rehabilitation is limited depending on your job. But then again, I suppose maybe that's not unreasonable, Stuart. So a financial crime for an accountant, I don't think I'd want an accountant responsible for a financial crime. A violent offence for a police officer, same for there. And a dishonesty offence for a barrister, because as you know, the BSB clearly sees dishonesty as the ultimate red line. That's why copying an essay can end a career, because I suppose integrity is absolutely foundational in court. But they've decided dangerous driving, while criminal and tragic, doesn't fundamentally undermine courtroom integrity in the same way. I suppose that's back to my point, isn't it, really? That it's an accident, and God forbid it could happen to any of us. So maybe the real issue isn't whether he should return. Maybe it's whether our sentencing framework for dangerous driving properly reflects the loss of life in the first place. That's back to where we started, isn't it? And Stuart, do you think the public outrage here is more about the profession? I don't. I think that what I said to you at the very beginning, and I see this in my Facebook group all the time, and I don't jump in with my view for this reason. The view is really that if somebody dies, 23 months isn't enough for the loss of that life.
I think it's both, to be honest. Part of it, when I first heard this story, both of those did frustrate me, but I think this is only in the news because of his profession. Let's take Angela Rayner, right? So she was the housing minister.
Yeah.
Because of an issue with
stamp duty, wasn't it?
Stamp duty, yeah, it was stamp duty. So she either underpaid or didn't pay, I forget the intricacies, her stamp duty. And she's the housing minister. Now, she claims that was something out of her knowledge. She still lost a job for it because she's the housing secretary, right?
Yeah.
It makes sense. There's different levels of that job and him being a barrister. But for me, I mean, there's discomfort in seeing someone tied to the justice system return to a position of authority after causing a death and lying about it. But there's also something very human about looking at the timeline, right? So you got the crash in 2022, sentenced in 2024, he's back to work in 2026. And you're thinking, that's a 4-year period. And only half of that is the sentence. Feels really quick. It feels like it's just especially with the justice system now, where it's taking longer and longer for people to have their day in court. But at the same time, as we say, if prison is about rehabilitation, then what are we saying if someone can never rebuild their life? And this case forces us to confront two uncomfortable truths. The first one, Michael Lupton's life cannot be restored. And the second, the system is designed to restore those who have served their sentence. Whether we're comfortable with that or not depends on what we believe justice is for, whether justice is fair. And I think that's where we would kind of open it out, because it's not black and white, this, is it? It's about accountability, trust, privilege, sentencing, and rehabilitation all in one. So the final thought, Adam, before we move on to our patented end of show animal story, which I know you and our audience absolutely love. We do. We really do. Does this decision damage public confidence in the justice system? Or is it actually proof that the system treats professionals the same as anyone else once their time is served, which is how, in theory, it should be? That's what I think. I've gone light this week. Yeah, my story is from the west coast of America, California. That's California to the layperson such as yourself, not down with the kids like me. And you'll be delighted to hear, Adam, that it's another cat story, the crazy cat man that you are, with your 1,000 cats. So animal rescuers in California recently shared security camera images capturing the moment a foster kitten spiced up her human family's dinner with a special ingredient, a dead mouse. The Merced SPCA, that stands for Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, shared photos captured by a home security camera in the foster family's kitchen, I should say. The photos show the foster kitten, who was named Wendy, dropping a dead mouse into a pot, which was cooking nicely on the stove. Wendy's foster owner said she was out feeding her dogs at the time, and the kitchen camera recorded the cat's attempt at cooking. She said the feline's suspicious behaviour was obvious when she returned to the kitchen because, you know what animals are like. They always give themselves away, Adam, don't they? They're always looking sheepish, ears down or whatever when it comes to dogs anyway. They know when they've done wrong. So that suspiciously acting behaviour, let's say, from Wendy led to her human checking the footage just to see what she'd been up to. And the surprise she then discovered was in the pot. A dead rat. So that's nice. Wendy's foster mum said after the incident, as you can guess, it was takeout for dinner that night. If you're listening to this, you got any thoughts on what we've discussed, drop us a comment, join the Facebook group. New episodes are out every Wednesday. Make sure you're following so you don't miss out. We'll see you next week.